Hello. Erica and I have both had long careers as children's librarians in public libraries. I first came to Kamishibai because of my love of storytelling, and I first saw Kamishibai demonstrated at one of the Bay Area storytelling festivals in the mid-90s, and I knew I had to make that part of my repertoire. When I retired from public libraries about 10 years ago, I knew I could not give up storytelling, and I continued to do it in schools and public libraries and summer camps. But then I was lucky enough to discover the Asian Art Museum of San Francisco's storytelling program. Now, the Asian Art Museum's storytelling program is fairly unique among American museums. To awaken children's interest in Asian art, storytellers regularly tell tales of traditional Asian folklore while they are looking closely at some spectacular works of art. For instance, take the beautiful Korean vase, which is covered with magpies and tigers. And as kids look closely at it, they're going to discover that one of the tigers is smoking a pipe. What's that about? And of course, the storyteller explains that the traditional beginning to a Korean folktale is long, long ago when tigers smoked a pipe. And this, of course, is the perfect opportunity to then tell those kids a traditional Korean folktale. We give them the opportunity to participate by joining in and setting it off with that tiger pipe phrase. And then as they listen to that story, continuing to look closely at that beautiful vase, we hope that it is planting the seeds so that the kids remember that story, tell that story that evening to their own family, and with that story, recall much more easily the details of that beautiful, beautiful. Likewise, the story of the famed and absolutely true to life samurai warrior Bokudan, who defeats a rogue samurai, is the perfect story to tell while the kids are standing in the Japan Gallery next to a full-size suit of samurai armor. And while they are inspecting the weapons and the fearsome features on the helmet, they are absorbing an action-packed story and a surprising twist that reminds them that samurai relied on their own wits just as much as they relied on their sword skills. Now, the museum uses storytelling in its programs for all ages. The program I just described of a tour that introduces several art objects with about 3 storytellings along the way is very popular with teachers of 1st through 5th grade classes. But recently, the museum introduced a program called START, Storytelling Leads to Art, which is focused on preschoolers and gives them a story, a very brief tour, and a chance to do their own art project afterwards. Family fun days on the weekends include storytelling and art-making activities for the range of ages that you find in a family, from adults down to toddlers. And some of the museum's big blockbuster exhibits, such as the 2013 Terracotta Warriors exhibit and the 2016 Ramayana exhibit, have often featured formal programs which began with a storyteller setting the scene to lead museum goers back into the past that the art is set in. The storytelling program started in 1995, and over the years, individual tellers would discover Kamishibai on their own and possibly use a story from time to time. But the program really got off to a more robust start in 2019 when the Education Department sponsored a Kamishibai performance training workshop for storytellers who were interested. It was Erica and I who got to lead that workshop. And over the course of several weeks, we trained 11 Kamishibai, and the program ended in the middle of the fall, and we put those Kamishibai to work right away. In December, we did several Kamishibai performances as part of World Kamishibai Day. And in January, Kamishibai performances accompanied the museum's mochi pounding ceremony. We are all set to launch our monthly Kamishibai performances when COVID shut the museum down. Now, we still don't know when the museum can reopen and when gatherings will be allowed to happen. But we do know that when that happens, Kamishibai will be a big part of what goes on. So I thought now that we would move into that post-pandemic future that we're all looking forward to and see how one of those programs plays out. So we'll start by introducing a piece of art in the museum and then move into a Kamishibai program. Come along. Welcome to the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco, and especially to this beautiful tea house, which was made for the museum in 2002, and it was transported to the museum in pieces, and it was constructed right here without a single nail. And it has a name, Muchuan, which is perfect for San Francisco because San Francisco is well known for its foggy nights and often foggy days. Now, the tea house exhibit is set up to display the amazing implements that one would use in a traditional Japanese tea ceremony. And this tea house actually has running water in it and electricity and a drain so that on special occasions, museum staff can make tea here and invite one in to sip some tea. But I'd like to have us look at this now, not so much as a tea house, but let's look at it and acknowledge the specific elements that you could find in any traditional Japanese house. Look, there are straw tatami mats on the floor, and there are shogi paper-covered windows. And now, will you pretend for me that you live in one of those traditional Japanese houses? Let's say that you've just come back from school, and you're a little bit tired, you're a little bit hungry, you put your books down, and just then you hear a noise. You hear, and if you really lived in a Japanese city in the 1940s, you would know exactly what that sound was and what you should do. You should jump up. You should find an adult. Ask them for money. Maybe your grandmother or your grandfather is here and they can give you a couple of 1 yen coins. Put those coins in your pockets. Run outside. And look, you would see your friends running down the street too, all following the sounds of those clappers. And you would take a deep breath. Can you smell roasted sweet potatoes? And those clappers, the sound would be getting louder and louder, and then you'd run around a corner, and there you'd see it, the Kamishibai man, and you would know that it was time for a story. Now, if you really did live in a Japanese city in those early years of the 20th century, Kamishibai men would be a very common sight. You would see them riding on their bicycles, looking for a good place to set up and perform their Kamishibai magic. Now, Kamishibai meant paper theater. And on their bicycles, the Kamishibai would have wooden boxes. Now, one of those wooden boxes would be full of drawers, and each drawer would be full of treats, savory treats, sweet treats. And another wooden box would be known as the butai. It was a wooden stage. It was kind of a cross between a picture frame and a miniature stage. And the Kamishibai would make his living by selling the treats he had in his wooden drawers and then sitting you down so that you could enjoy watching a Kamishibai story unfold in his butai theater. Now, what kind of treats would he have to sell you? Oh, roasted sweet potatoes that you could smell roasting long before the storytelling started. And he would have cinnamon sticks and rice crackers, sometimes with plum jam, and a special treat might be pickled eels. And another special treat in the summer would be ice cream. And he would sell you these treats. And when you were settled down on the ground with your snacks, he would make his way back to his bicycle. And he would open up the doors to his butai and start his story. Mukashi, Mukashi, once upon a time. And now, it's your turn. Help me start this story. Mukashi, Mukashi, and settle down to listen to The Old Man and the Fox. Hajimari, Hajimari, The Old Man and the Fox. Will you help me start this story in Japanese? Mukashi, Mukashi. Mukashi, Mukashi, there was once an old man who loved to play tricks. And one day, as he was going, that is the end of The Old Man and the Fox. Help me close it up and say, Oshimai, Oshimai. So I hope you enjoyed your Kamishibai by the Tea House. You can imagine that the Asian Art Museum is a wonderful place to perform Kamishibai. It's full of Asian scholars and knowledgeable curators, and I turn to them sometimes when I have a question. I did so when I was preparing The Old Man and the Fox, and I came across that phrase, Jaranbong, Jarangari, Jaranbong, Jarangari. What does it mean? How do you say it? And they explained that it was an example of onomatopoeia, that it was replicating the sound of several different instruments all playing at once in sort of a jangle. And it's the sound that you would indeed associate with a traditional Japanese funeral procession. I find the kids love these sound effects. They like to hear them and then they like to join in with them as a way of participation. Now, when we tell stories in front of the tea house, we usually only tell one. We need to keep people moving on through the museum and discovering more things. But on special occasions like the World Kamishibai Day Festival and the mochi pounding ceremony, we'll put 2 or 3 together in a program, and we'll often break them up with a Kamishibai quiz show that we enjoy using. It's one that we've modeled on one that Erica showed us. And in Kamishibai format includes a lot of questions about the Asian Art Museum's collection and programs. More Kamishibai project that the museum has been working on despite the pandemic shutdown. The education department has commissioned an original Kamishibai storyboards to accompany one of our favorite Chinese tales called The Dragon's Pearl. And the illustrations you see here are from the work in progress by artist Ting Shui. So there's lots of Kamishibai to look forward to at the museum, but first we have to get the museum doors open, and those restrictions on public gatherings have to be eased so we can open up the doors of the butai. But that will happen. The Japanese American storyteller Motoko has shared with us an anti-COVID-19 charm. And we're thinking about that every day. We're working on getting our vaccines, and we're looking forward to lots more Kamishibai at the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Erica Siskind, and I am a children's librarian at the Oakland Public Library. In the normal course of my work, I read stories aloud to young audiences every week from our collection of picture books. I discovered Kamishibai about a decade ago, maybe 2008 or 2009, when I was given a sample Kamishibai from Leaf Moon Arts, a local publisher in the Bay Area of California. And then over the next several years, I purchased more stories from Kamishibai for kids, as well as some that I got directly from Doshinsha in Japan, from Siete Leguas in Spain, from Don Bosco Verlag in Germany, and just this past year from Coraini Edizioni in Italy. I have performed these published stories at the public library where I work, and also because of my role as a children's librarian, at our local museum and at several local schools, and occasionally at a park or a street festival over the past decade. When I am performing Kamishibai in library programs, it's usually for an audience of children ages maybe 3 to 10 years old and their parents or caregivers. And the performances are usually about 30 to 45 minutes, and they usually include a fairly predictable sequence that is patterned after and very similar to my ordinary book-based story times. So generally speaking, for a Kamishibai performance at the library, I will start off with a very brief introduction to Kamishibai. I usually ask, does anyone know what it is? And if most people don't, then I give them a brief introduction. And then I read the first Kamishibai story. And then I do some kind of an audience participation element, like an action rhyme. One of the ones I like is a rhyme that starts off, Yamaga ate, and it goes on from there. I have some songs that I like to do. It's pretty nice to pair a little rhyme that starts off, this is big, 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 this is small, 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 with a story that's about a giant ogre, for example. I have some other songs that I like to do. Then I read the second Kamishibai story, and then I like to use, for the third part, an interactive Kamishibai. Like something that has American Sign Language signs to go with it, or just an interactive Kamishibai like Koro Koro Japon, or it could be the quiz show. Then if it's an older audience, or if the audience seems to still have some attention span, then I will include a third Kamishibai story. And then I like to give out sweets or crackers that I get at our local Japanese market. And then if it's a morning show and we still have time and energy, then sometimes we do a craft, like making an origami paper doll or some little origami boxes. Once we made traditional bamboo spinners, and if we don't have time for all of that, then I hand out a coloring sheet. And that's pretty much my standard program. So trying to record Kamishibai during our shelter at home period is not very fun at all, and has really made it very obvious how much I expect and anticipate and how much I enjoy the community spirit, which I believe it's called kyokan in Japanese, but that community spirit that we all feel in a live in-person Kamishibai show. I really miss it. So as I mentioned, I am a children's librarian, and I like to do art and I like to write, but that is not at all necessary to perform Kamishibai. It is enough to perform the stories. It's interesting enough for the audience and for me to get excited about them. But I did get inspired to try a little more. And so in 2014, I built a box so that I could attach the wooden butai stage to my bicycle and carry the box and a few stories and a few other supplies with me to do a story time at the museum or at a school. And I really love my box. It makes me happy to put it on my bike, and it is really wonderful to arrive somewhere to do a story and then to wrap up your box and leave by your bicycle. So I love that part. And then also I have created some Kamishibai myself. The first thing I tried was to illustrate a Japanese folktale. I found one in a book called Japanese Children's Favorite Stories by Florence Sakade. The one I chose was Rabbit in the Moon. That was published by Tuttle in 1958. But in fact, I don't often read that one out loud. The message doesn't always resonate with me, and I'm also a little self-conscious about the quality of the illustrations. And then I tried to write and illustrate an original story. I decided to go with the rabbit theme because I was born in the year of the rabbit. And so I wrote and illustrated one called The Hungry Rabbit, and then I translated it into Spanish so I could take it with me to Terry Farfan's festival in Nuevo León, Mexico. That was in 2016. And I'm kind of self-conscious about the writing and the illustrations of that one, so I don't read it very often either. Then I tried adapting a children's song from Central America. It's called Juanito Cuando Baila. I tried adapting that into a Kamishibai, which is very fun to read on Halloween or on Dias de los Muertos. In this case, Juanito is a dancing skeleton, and so the song goes, Juanito cuando baila, 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 Juanito cuando baila, baila con el dedito, dito, dito, así baila Juanito. And then it goes through all the parts of the body. So that one is very fun. I tried to do it in glow-in-the-dark paint, so you could use it with a black light, and it kind of works. But you can see the skeleton while you're dancing. Then in 2018, I went to Japan to attend the annual conference of Ikaja in Tokyo. And then I also went to Kyoto and went to visit the Kyoto Manga Museum. And there I saw a Kamishibai show by the performer Ikkyu. And I had a short conversation with her about it. And then later we chatted on Facebook, and I asked her if I could copy her idea of having a quiz in the Kamishibai quiz show. And she said, sure, go ahead. She got the idea from her mentor, and I think several of the performers at the Kyoto Manga Museum do the quiz show. And so I made up my own version, and like she does, everybody gets a prize. If you guess, you're going to get a prize. And the prizes are usually stickers, or sometimes I make little origami cranes or boxes or bookmarks, little things like that. So that's very fun for people. Another idea I tried was to try reprinting a published book into Kamishibai format. So I wrote to the publishers of Edward Gorey's book, The Gashly Crumb Tinies, and said, can I do this? And can I use the illustrations in a bigger card format and do a Kamishibai presentation. And they said yes, so long as it's only in the library, not on video, because it's really the same as reading a book out loud in the library. And I like that one. It's in the Gashley Crumb Tinies. It's an alphabet book of little children dying. So it's also good for Halloween. Then I realized that the butai is perfect for shadow puppet plays because, you know, it's open. There's no back on it. So I cut a translucent sheet of plastic to fit right in, just like a card, and you can use a reading light behind it. And so far, I've only made 2 shadow puppet plays to fit into this format. One is the European folktale of Little Red Riding Hood, adapted a bit, and the other is a Laotian Hmong folktale of a tiger, which was told by Blia Shong and Nancy Hum in the book 9-in-1 Grr Grr, which was published by the Children's Book Press in 1989. So those, they really only work at night. I think during the daytime it's not as dramatic, and I guess they're not really Kamishibai, but they use the butai stage, which is perfect for a shadow puppet play. And so I guess with all of these experiments that I've been doing, I am not just a performer of Kamishibai, but a writer and illustrator as well. Although I still see my main task as being the performer. So I wanted to reiterate that a Kamishibai performer does not have to be an artist or writer. There are many, many wonderful published stories available in a variety of languages. And I also wanted to say that children's librarians show up in front of assorted ages of children every week, sometimes multiple times a week, to read and reread stories in the service of a mix of educational and entertainment goals. And I think that performing Kamishibai is not that different from reading aloud from a picture book, but it does have the feeling of a dramatic, multidimensional storytelling performance. So children's librarians, I think, have the entire set of skills and experience to be Kamishibai performers, to be great Kamishibai performers. I guess I wanted to add that I also have some more complicated thoughts about Kamishibai. Published Kamishibai stories are often folk tales that are authentic representations of a specific culture, and yet the format lends itself to free interpretations and improvisation and a lot of audience interaction. It really expects that, it seems to me, which can lead in different directions than a faithful presentation of the script. So in my case, I add things to the story that are not in the script to make the story more engaging for the audience in front of me, and meaning more interactive and perhaps more reflective of my unique point of view. And I ask myself whether this might undermine our intent to introduce diverse cultural expressions to our library patrons. For example, in The Old Man and the Mice, the folktale of The Old Man and the Mice, this is a Kamishibai for Kids Doshinsha publication. The text shows a rhyme, and it says the mice are singing, but I couldn't find the tune anywhere, so I made up my own. It didn't seem right to read it without a tune, so I made up my own. And then, because I'm very shy about my singing voice, I also added American Sign Language signs, which helps as a mnemonic device and also distracts people from my singing voice. And this is an embellishment that has no cultural authenticity or grounding. It's only for my fun and enjoyment. And I'm not sure what people would make of that. In addition, for many stories, I add in Japanese sound effects, which are easy to find online. There's a website from tofugu, which has Japanese onomatopoeia. The sound effects are something that that you see in some folk tales, like for example, it will say he walked along the path, ton toko, and it will say it right in the text. It's also something that you see in comic books and in manga, and also in anime, in cartoons. So it seemed like it's probably authentic to the culture, even when it's not in the script. But I'm making a guess about that. So, and I have a lot of fun with it. Like the sound effects are very fun for the audience. Like, for example, in The Wife with the Unusual Talent, which has a lot of farting sounds. And they also come up in the Momotaro story, and there's a lot of them in the Goblin, the Water Imp, and the Thunder God. There's some in the Dragon's Tears and the Old Man and the Fox that I can remember right now. So I really enjoy that. However, I should say that when I went to the Ikaja conference in Tokyo in 2018, they explicitly emphasized that we should use a narrator voice that was not overly emotional or melodramatic. That it would detract from the content of the words and the language. And I've noticed, especially during COVID, when we can see performances from people all over the world, that I am not the only one who doesn't follow this advice. But it is a question about the cultural authenticity of it, and if we're sharing stories that are not that are a mix of things, are we misrepresenting them in some way? So that's a question I have. Yes, so having said that, what I would like to see is more performances at Bay Area museums and libraries and schools. And I would especially love to support Japanese Americans who want to perform traditional Kamishibai or who want to create their own Kamishibai. So we could see that at the library. And in the meantime, I have offered a Kamishibai making workshop at my public library, which was a lot of fun. It's for kids to do it. It's a lot of work for them. And I think it's a format that grown-ups or kids can make. In the context of the public library, people drop into programs, so coming consistently to a series of programs is a little tricky, but it can happen. It just, it takes some work, but it was very fun, and I hope to do more of that. So to wrap up, I am going to play my extended version of one Kamishibai that shows the kind of free interpretation and embellishments that I mentioned, and I would love your feedback about it. Thank you so much for listening today. Hi, my name's Erica. The nursery rhyme that I want to share with you comes from Japan, and it goes like this. Yama kara koro koro yama imo, sato kara koro koro sato imo, go imo mo ato kara koro koro, kocho 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 no kocho kocho. That's the whole rhyme. I'm singing it in Japanese, and I'm doing the American Sign Language signs to go along with it. But I bet you're wondering what it means, right? And inside the Kamishibai, Kamishibai means paper theater in Japanese. Inside the Kamishibai, there is a story that explains the whole thing. It is a nursery rhyme about root vegetables. It starts off, it's called Koro Koro Japon. Here's a picture of the first character in the story. Can you guess what root vegetable it is? Some of you might be thinking it's a sweet potato. If so, you are very close. It's actually a yam. In this case, a mountain yam. And the story starts off like this. Yamaimo-san gane. And that means, here is Mr. Mountain Yam. And Mr. Mountain Yam is going to sing the line of the nursery rhyme that's all about him. This is Mountain Potato. Mr. Mountain Potato is going to sing something. So what it means is this: from the mountain, rolling, rolling, comes the mountain potato. So that's what he sings. Yamakara koro koro yamaimo. Yamakara koro koro yamaimo. You want to sing it with him? Yamakara koro koro yamaimo. Yamakara koro koro yamaimo. And then all the children sing together, rolling, rolling, rolling. So in Japanese, that's koro 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 koro. So we say no, all together. Koro 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 koro. Japon! Japon means splash! That's the end of part 1. Are you ready for part 2? In part 2, we meet another character, another root vegetable. Can you guess who it is? What root vegetable this is? It's a little trickier. We don't see this one as often in the United States. If you guessed taro root, you are right. Good guess. Yes, so this one says, Satoimo-san mane. That means here is Mrs. Village Potato. Satoimo-san means village potato. So the sign for village is a house plus another house plus another house. So a lot of houses make a village. So village potato, that's her. That's her name, Satoimo-san. And so the rhyme goes like this. Sato kara koro koro sato imo. That means from the village, rolling, rolling, comes the village potato. Sato kara koro koro sato imo. Sato kara koro koro sato imo. Keep singing. Sato kara koro koro sato imo. Sato kara koro koro sato imo. Then all the children sing rolling, rolling together. Say no. Koro 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 koro. Japon! Splash! That's the end of part 2. Now in part 3, we mix it up a little bit. It is Koi momo ato kara koro koro. And that's a little bit tricky because koi momo ato kara means I'll see you later. But koimo means taro root cormlets. It's the little baby taro roots. So it's a little bit like if we were doing a funny play on words like that in English, we might say, see you later, potato, like that. It's a little bit like that. So it goes, Koi momo ato kara koro koro. Koi momo ato kara koro koro. Koi momo ato kara koro koro. And then all together, say no. Koro 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 koro. Japon! 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 They all splash, and then there they are in the boiling water, and they go chapu 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 chapu. You know what that means? Bubble 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 bubble, splishy splashy bubble, splishy splashy bubble 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 bubble. And that is when the grown-ups tickle the kids. Kocho 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 no kocho 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 no kocho kocho. Do you want to hear the whole rhyme from the beginning? Maybe you can do it with me. Yama kara koro koro yamaimo. Sato kara koro koro sato imo. Koi momo ato kara koro koro. Kocho 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 no kocho kocho. That's the end. Oshimai. But I have one last picture I want to show you. It is a photograph of 3 different kinds of potatoes. So the first one here, the big one there, that is a photograph of yamaimo, so mountain yam. It's very big. It's a little more starchy than a sweet potato. And on the far end, number 3 over there, that is, I have one right here. That is the taro root. Do you see it there? It's hairy. You boil it to eat it. That's why it goes chapu, 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 chapu. The taro, remember it was called satoimo, satoimo. And then in the middle, there's a picture of satsumaimo, because a lot of kids eat these and like them, right? Very sweet, sweet potato. And yamaimo means potato that grows in the mountains. Satoimo means potato that grows in the village, and Satsumaimo means potato that grows in the Satsuma region. And that is the end. Bye-bye. So in preparing this video for you today, there was a little bit of a conversation between myself and Tara McGowan and Hideko Nagano, who created the Koro Koro Japon Kamishibai. And we decided that it would be great for you to see different versions of it. So you're about to see a performance that Nagano-san did and posted just this past year. I don't know the date of the performance, but it was posted online this past year. And so you can compare the two and get a feeling for it. Here you go.
うんちかな何かね、山芋さんがね、山芋だったよ。山からコロコロ山芋。山からコロコロ山芋。じゃポーン。あれれれれ。なんだ何かな。どんぐりかね。ねえ、なんだろう。里芋さんもね。里からコロコロ里芋。里からコロコロ里芋。じゃポーン。あれれれれ。恋もも後からコロコロ。恋もも後からコロコロ。ジャポンジャポンジャポンジャポンジャポン。あらあら、みんなで芋の子洗いだ。くちゃくちゃのくちゃくちゃ。おしまい。はい。じゃあ、もうこれでおしまいにしましょうかね。はい。じゃあ、一つね、ボルヌマーさんという方の紙芝居持ってきたんだけど、もう長くなるからね、今日はこれでおしまいにします。またたまに紙芝居をやったらいいかなと思いますよ。はい。
So that wraps up my presentation today. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I look forward to seeing more Kamishibai.